Hello YouTube, it's Barbara Jean. I'm going to try to explain something in the book of Revelation. It's not an easy word. In fact, it's really hard to explain. I've already tried to make a video on this particular thing in the book of Revelation, and I didn't even understand myself. Excuse me. Okay, I'm going to try to explain the half-hour silence in the chapter 7 or chapter 8. First, let me read that. Revelation chapter 8, verse 1. And when he had opened the seventh seal, there was a silence in heaven about the space of a half hour. And I saw 7 angels which stood before God, and them which were given 7 trumpets. Now, I am going to show you something. I hope this helps to explain something about the rapture. The tribulation period is described as 1 hour. Okay, anybody who knows anything about the tribulation knows that it's described as 1 hour or a 7-year period. Okay, which is broken up in a period of 3.5 years to 3.5 years. 3.5 years of peace, 3.5 years of war and hell on earth. Basically, the wrath of God is poured out. So first 3.5 years are peace. The last 3.5 years are tribulation and wrath that's poured out in judgment on the earth. But I wanted to show you something that I don't know if whether you realize that most people don't, because most people when they read the book of Revelation, they start from the front, they go to the back, and they think that everything is in chronological order, so it's all in order, because that's the way our human minds work, that everything is one thing after another, after another, after another. So everything is one step, next step, next step, next step. But that's not necessarily so in God's kingdom when he writes his word. As we have example, for instance, when Jesus Christ stood up in the temple and he read a passage from Isaiah declaring the beginning of his ministry. He didn't finish the rest of the passage. He stopped midway through a verse and didn't finish the other half. But that meant that he was going to fulfill the first part of the verse, but the last part of the verse will remain to be fulfilled in the future. But we didn't know that. So this is the way our minds think, is that everything has to be one step, next step, next step, next step. Well, the book of Revelation is one of those things where God doesn't necessarily put everything directly one step, next step, next step, next step. He mixes things in and out of the passages. So I'm going to show you what I mean. I just read about the half an hour of silence in the chapter 8. Now I'm going to go back to chapter 3 and read about the church of Philadelphia. This is the church that gets raptured, we know, because she's kept from the hour of tribulation, which is about to come upon the earth. I'm going to start at verse 9. Behold, I will make them of a synagogue of Satan, which say they are Jews, and are not, but do lie. Behold, I will make them to come and worship before thy feet, and to know that I have loved thee. Because thou hast kept the word of my patience, I also will keep you from the hour of temptation, which shall come upon the whole world, all the world, to try them that dwell upon the earth. Behold, I come quickly. Hold that fast which thou hast, that no man take thy crown. Him that overcometh will I make a pillar in the temple of my God, and he shall go no more out, and I will write on him the name of my God, and the name of the city of my God, which is the new Jerusalem, which cometh down out of heaven from my God, and I will write upon him my new name. He that hath an ear, let him hear what the Spirit saith unto the churches. Okay, so here we have this half an hour that's described in chapter 8. Now I'm skipping back to chapter 3, and here God is talking about the hour of tribulation, which shall come upon the whole world to tempt it, this temptation. Okay, so here we have an hour, and here we have the hour, and then in verse 8, chapter 8, we have the half an hour. This is important to remember this. Now I'm going to go, and I'm going to skip over to chapter 5, and read about the 6th seal. Years ago, when I started reading and studying the book of Revelation, the Lord spoke to me and said that each seal corresponds with each church dispensation. Okay? And I'm not saying this is the only way to look at it. I'm just saying that the thing about the scriptures is that there's more than one way of looking at things. Again, our human mind says there's only one way. This is the only way. There's no more applications. It's only one application and that's it. But in God's kingdom, there's more than one application and more than one way to look at one thing. When the Lord told me was that each seal corresponds with each church age. So when the first church age, when Christ was revealed, the Antichrist was revealed because Satan counterfeits everything that Jesus does. Okay, he tries to take credit for it. He messes things up, but he wants to imitate the Lord. He tries to imitate God. So when the Christ was revealed, the Antichrist was revealed. Okay, so therefore, when the first church age was open or was revealed with the church of Ephesus, the first seal was also opened. The second church, the second seal. The third church, the third seal, and on and on. Now, when you look at the sixth seal, we know that the sixth church refers to the sixth church age, which is the Church of Philadelphia, which we know gets removed from the hour of tribulation. When you go to the sixth seal of chapter 5, verse 12, and I beheld when he had opened the sixth seal, and lo, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became as blood. And the stars of heaven fell unto the earth, even as a fig tree casteth her untimely figs when she is shaken out of a mighty wind, and the heavens departed as a scroll when it is rolled together, and every mountain and island were moved out of their place. And the kings of the earth, and the great men and the rich men and the chief captains, and the mighty men and every bondsman and freeman hid themselves in the dens and the rocks in the mountains. This describes the rapture. This is what's going to happen at the rapture. There's going to be a great earthquake when the graves are open. People are having dreams and visions right now that there's going to be a blood moon. They see the sky darkening. They see all these things. We see the scroll rolling back. That's described in another chapter in the New Testament about when Christ comes. The graves shall open. The skies will roll back as a seal, as a scroll. The skies will roll back as a scroll. Here we see the rapture in chapter 6 of Revelation, starting at verse 12. So we have in chapter 3, the Church of Philadelphia, they were removed from the hour of tribulation. We have in chapter 6, the sixth seal opening, and it describes the rapture. Okay, what's going to happen at the rapture. We also know that these the governments of the earth are preparing dens and caves to hide in. When the rapture of the church happens, they're preparing for the meteor showers and the nuclear holocaust and everything that happened at the coming of Christ. They're waiting for it, and they've already prepared. So this describes the rapture. And you go on into chapter 7. It describes this is a descriptive chapter. It talks about how God is going to seal the 144,000. I believe these are Jewish evangelists who will evangelize the world after the church is removed. But they have to be sealed because they need to be preserved, and this is God's way of preserving them is by putting a seal on them so that Satan cannot destroy them. And then you go down to verse 9 and you get this description of what's going on in heaven. Now we've already seen what's going to happen on the earth, that the sky will be darkened, the moon will be blood, and there'll be a great earthquake. But we see in verse 9 of chapter 7, we see the description of this multitude that shows up in heaven. And it says from verse 9, and after this I beheld, and lo, a great multitude, which no man could number, of all nations and kindreds and peoples and tongues stood before the throne and before the Lamb, clothed in white, and palms in their hands, and cried with a loud voice, Salvation to our God, which sitteth upon the throne, and unto the Lamb. And so now the angel asks him, who are these people? And John doesn't know who they are, because they're not just Jews, they're everybody. They're from every nation of the world. And starting in verse 14, and I said unto him, Sir, thou knowest. And he said to me, These are they which came out of great tribulation, have washed their robes, and made them white in the blood of the Lamb. Therefore they are before the throne of God, and serve him day and night in the temple. And he that sitteth on the throne shall dwell among them. And they shall hunger no more, neither thirst any more, neither shall the sun light upon them, nor heat. For the Lamb which is in the midst of the throne shall feed them, and shall lead them unto living waters, and God shall wipe away all tears from their eyes. Now, what's interesting is that it talks about the temple, that these shall serve in the temple. If you go back to the Church of Philadelphia, it very specifically says that they will be in the temple, that they are... he that overcometh, I will make a pillar in the temple of my God. So this is the church. This is the church that's raptured. So we have another description of the rapture. First in chapter 3, now in chapter 6, when it talks about the sixth seal, and then you have it again in chapter 7. Now we have a description of what happens after the seventh. When the seventh seal is open, the Laodicean church, the seventh seal judgment, there's a space of a half an hour of silence in heaven. That's an important moment, because here we have described that the tribulation is an hour with 2 periods of 3.5. The half an hour of peace is this facendo, this false peace that when Satan is cast down into the earth, he will take credit for. He will take credit for this peace, and everything on the earth will seem wonderful. Because after that terrible thing, all that tragedy and whatever else is going to happen on the earth after the rapture, the nuclear bombs going off, the meteor showers, this false signs and wonders from Satan, there's going to be a half an hour of peace, basically the time when Israel will be given a sense of peace and safety. They will be able to rebuild their temple. Everybody will be getting along. The Antichrist and Satan and the false prophet will have set up their kingdom, and everything will seem like it's right with the world. But then after that half an hour of peace, all hell will break loose. I want to go to chapter 12. Again, this is another description of this is a spiritual description of, again, the rapture. Because the woman in chapter 12, there's a wonder that appeared in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun and the moon under her feet, and upon her head a crown of 12 stars. And she being with child, travailing in birth, and pain to be delivered. And there appeared another wonder in heaven. Behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 crowns upon his head. And his tail drew a third part of the stars from heaven, and did cast them to the earth. Here we have the stars falling out of heaven. Where did we see that before? We saw that back in chapter 6. Chapter 6, when the 6th seal was open. Okay, I hope this is making sense. But you see what I'm saying? God moves things around, but it's describing the same thing. This woman giving birth is the church giving birth to the kingdom. Okay? But it has to first manifest in the spiritual realm, and then it manifests in the earthly realm. So for the first part of this, the woman giving birth, she's removed. It talks about after she gives birth, she fleds into the wilderness, where she has a place prepared of God that they should feed her there 1,203 days. So this is 3.5 years. So after this war, Satan is cast down. This woman is removed. This is the church being raptured and removed from the church with the Holy Spirit. Okay? And then there's this 3.5 years, a period of peace after Satan has been cast down to the earth. He's setting up his kingdom. Everything seems hunky-dory. And then after 3.5 years, he's had enough. He goes after Israel. Israel then, in the physical realm, who represents the church, or represents the Holy Spirit, who gave birth to the child. Satan can't stand it anymore, and then goes after Israel, who has a place prepared for it in the wilderness. Okay? So I hope this helps you to understand that the book of Revelation isn't strictly one step, because that's human thinking. Okay? That's not the way God thinks. That's not the way the book of Revelation is really laid out. Although in many ways it is chronological, there's a lot of descriptive passages in between. And sometimes he puts things in and then moves things around. For, like I said, in this instance, the rapture is described in at least 3 different places. The chapter about Philadelphia, the sixth seal, the people in heaven who, and then the woman. There's 4 places that the rapture is described in the book of Revelation. I hope this is concise. I'm not one of the most verbal people in the world. I'm not a verbal person. I can think things forever, and I get feelings about things, but it's very hard for me to express them in a way that's concise and precise so that you can understand it. I hope this has come across understandable. I'm really trying to make your philosophy, your doctrines easier and simpler so you can understand how things work in the Bible. Okay? That's all I can say. I just hope this makes sense to some of you out there, because it is an important topic. This is about the rapture, that we are removed, the bride, the church is removed. And it says so in the book of Revelations. At least 4 times it's mentioned. Okay? So I will leave it at that. God bless.